Hamas attacks Gazan civilians as they tried to pick up food and other humanitarian aid, and then it blamed the IDF. And much of the international media went along with it. Now, the IDF has released footage proving that Hamas and not the IDF opened fire on the crowd, and demands are being made that the international media retract their previous reports. Despite this, the United Nations Secretary General is demanding that there will be an investigation, while strongly hinting that he believes that Israel is responsible before any such investigation was even begun. So guys, welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm Yair Pinto, bringing you all the truth about what is happening in Israel. So the ground maneuver within Operation Gideon's Chariots extended to more places in the Gaza Strip over the Jewish Shavuot high holiday weekend, with dozens of terrorists eliminated in a Hamas command and control compound in Deir el-Balach in Gaza. Fighting under fire pressure is expected to keep intensifying this week as the IDF sources confirm that Hamas is under great pressure. One tool that the IDF is using to fight Hamas in the Gaza Strip is old, worn-out APCs that are packed filled with explosives and then driven using remote control steering mechanisms into Hamas firing positions to explode inside those strong points of Hamas. These 12-ton monsters are causing blasts that can be heard all the way to Tel Aviv in the heart of Israel. Under the pressure from all of this, Hamas has suddenly changed course and said it is interested in negotiations that it had rejected just a few days ago. What has brought about this sudden change? Let me know what you think in the comments. The terrorist organization is definitely in a lot of trouble. Probably it's in the worst shape that it has been since its founding, running out of money and with its military leadership almost entirely eliminated. Military pressure and a loss of legitimacy amongst the Gaza residents are producing a dramatic shift. And meanwhile, Egypt and Qatar say that they are ready to continue efforts to resolve disagreements to reach an agreement in Gaza based on the Witkoff proposal. However, after Hamas's most recent refusal to that proposal, which included additional far-reaching demands and conditions, Israel decided not to send a delegation to Qatar for further talks. Israel is now focusing on military pressure and on strengthening the new humanitarian aid mechanism. For its part, the United States is not giving up on a deal, and President Donald Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff asked the Palestinian-American businessman Bishra Bachbach to remain in Qatar in an effort to soften the terrorist group's position. And back in the Gaza Strip, a new problem has arisen in the form of an arch-terrorist who holds the hostages and has veto power over the negotiations with Israel. The IDF is pursuing this evil man who is the last obstacle to a deal. His name is Ezzadin El-Hadid, and he began as an exposure of collaborators with Israel and rose to the top Hamas's military wing after Mohammed Sinwar's elimination. He holds veto power over the negotiations and is not shy about using it. And speaking of negotiations, Iran is expected to reject the new proposal that Washington presented for a renewed nuclear deal, and according to Tehran, the proposal is unsuccessful and contrary to the Islamic Republic's interests. This is despite a report that Washington did not demand the dismantling of all nuclear facilities in Iran and even allowed low-level enrichment on its soil. We must remember that escalation is still on the table amidst the continued refusal of the Iranians to take no for an answer and the possibility of an American compromise that would be impossible for Israel to live with. In any case, the assessment is that the Americans will give negotiations another chance, and according to documents obtained by Axios, the American proposal delivered Saturday includes preliminary ideas for discussion in the next round of negotiations. For its part, Israel is remaining silent so it will not be blamed if there is a crisis in the talks. But the quiet understanding in Jerusalem is that we must be ready for escalation and prepare as if this is the inevitable next step. And in a related story, Iran is strengthening its air defensive capabilities against a possible strike after the S-300 systems were damaged in the previous Israeli attacks last October. Despite the damage, experts in Israel estimate large parts of Iran's air defensive array remains intact and were repaired, highlighting the complexity and the danger of a strike on the Islamic Republic's nuclear facilities. And elsewhere, a report in Arab media portals indicates that the United States is accelerating its withdrawal of forces from Syria. Syrian sources reported departures of convoys from 2 bases in the east of the country, and Kurdish commando forces have taken up positions at these military sites. Israel is watching these developments with concern, alongside a decision to integrate thousands of former jihadist rebels into the new Syrian army. The al-Julani regime even received Trump's administration's support for this move, provided it is done transparently. And finally, yet another ballistic missile was launched by the Houthis in Yemen and intercepted by the IDF on Monday. Millions of Israelis in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and other cities around the country once again moved to the bomb shelters as the IDF intercepted the missile overhead. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on day 606 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shiite militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are acting under the orders of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And a moment before we begin, I want to thank you for your support, for your prayers, and for your help sharing the truth. If you want to keep helping us create additional videos like this one, please hit the subscribe button and also consider donating to our work at tbnisrael.com/give. Now, let's get started with a look at the Operation Gideon's Chariots in Gaza, boots on the ground style. In the last 24 hours, the IDF continued to expand the ground maneuver across the Gaza Strip as the Air Force hit dozens of terror targets. This included a Hamas command and control compound and had been used by the terrorists to plan and carry out terror activities against Israeli civilians and against the IDF forces. Furthermore, several tunnel shafts were discovered and demolished, weapons depots, and additional terror infrastructure were all targeted by the ground and the air forces. In a notable event, the IDF Infantry Kfir Brigade combat team in Khan Yunis located and destroyed more than 100 rocket components and additional military equipment stored in an arms warehouse, as dozens of terrorists were eliminated and military buildings used for the terrorist organizations in Gaza were destroyed. Another story to emerge from the fighting in recent days concerns a new tactic that the IDF is employing in order to safeguard its own soldiers and maximize the damage to the enemy. This involves taking old, worn-out APCs that can still move but are no longer suitable for use by operational forces, fitting them out with a remote-controlled gearbox for steering, packing them filled with high explosives and sending them into Hamas positions to be blown up. The blast that these suicide APCs make when they go off can be heard and felt as far away as Tel Aviv in the heart of Israel, especially when they are set in to blow up Hamas arms depots, which often contains large amounts of high explosives that go off along with them. This system was adopted after the Golani Brigade's APC disaster in Sajaiya and has since become a method that allows route clearing, building demolition, and eradication of enemy infrastructure without exposing the IDF forces to direct threats. Amidst all of this activity, the IDF now estimates that its ground forces have firm control over around 40% of the Strip's territory. In a related story that is shocking even to veteran observers of this conflict, 2 days ago, the Hamas terrorist organization executed civilians who tried to take food from an aid distribution center and then issued a statement accusing Israel of being responsible for the incident. But that's not the really shocking part. A really shocking part is that so many in the international media went along with this lie and repeated Hamas's accusations almost word for word. This is not the first time that this has happened, but after almost 2 years of this war, it is still amazing to me to see that the international media keeps falling for the same Hamas deception and lies over and over again. This is why this is a spiritual war, and the enemy is using deception to trick the world. The United Nations General Secretary has also demanded an investigation of the incident and strongly hinted that he is sure that Israel is to blame for what happened, even after the IDF published video footage of the scene which clearly shows Hamas terrorists firing into the crowd. This is not the first time that Hamas has attacked people as they try to pick up humanitarian aid, and it probably won't be the last time, since this tactic of murdering their own people and then blaming Israel for it seems to be working so well for them. The international media is either too biased or too lazy to get the facts right before running headlines that make Israel look bad, and that's something else that's been going on for a very long time and is unlikely to change anytime soon. So the IDF did its best to push back on Monday, issuing a statement that said false reports are being circulated that include serious accusations against the IDF regarding the fire at the Gaza residence in the area of the humanitarian aid distribution inside the Gaza Strip. Initial investigation findings showed that the IDF did not fire at civilians when they were near or in the aid distribution area, and these are false reports. The IDF enables the American civilian company GHF and international aid organizations to distribute aid to Gaza residents and not to Hamas terrorists. Hamas is doing everything it can to prevent the successes of this food distribution in Gaza. Hamas is a cruel terrorist organization that starves the population and endangers it in order to preserve its rule inside the Gaza Strip. As part of its cruel conduct and its attempts to disrupt the aid, it directly harms the Strip civilians. Attached to the statement, the IDF spokesperson's unit revealed drone footage showing gunmen in Gaza firing at Gaza civilians on their way to collect humanitarian aid in the southern area of Khan Yunis. At the same time, the American Aid Foundation, GHF, rejected the claims raised in Gaza about shooting inside the distribution compound in Tel Sultan. The foundation even released footage from the relevant time showing no shooting at all. And Hamas spreads lies and the media reports them without checking, the foundation report stated. It also added that the more the GHF succeeds, the more Hamas will intensify its fake news spreading. The foundation clarified that in recent days the aid had been distributed as scheduled without incidents. On the other hand, do you recall that this week Hamas police fired at Gazan residents who attempted to break into the Hamas warehouse storing food in the center of the Gaza Strip? The warehouse had been used by Hamas to hold supplies that had not been distributed to the civilians for months, and these residents were tired of waiting for Hamas to give them this good food that they deserve because the international community gave it to them for free and Hamas stole it. So the IDF Arabic spokesman, Lieutenant Colonel Avichai Aderi, published the footage from the event and sharply accused Hamas, saying, "For months, Hamas tried to spread the lie of hunger only to discover that it itself was hiding tons of flour. May God avenge you, infidels." 5 Gazan civilians lost their lives in this incident, and Hamas did not even pretend to apologize, but the international media largely ignored it. And meanwhile, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who makes no secret of his anti-Israel feelings, issued a statement this week calling for an independent, impartial investigation of the shooting incidents in the Gaza Strip in which Palestinians who came to receive food were harmed, and for those responsible to be brought to justice. To be fair, it's possible that he is aware of the reports of shooting deaths of Palestinians by Hamas, and he would like to establish the facts once and for all. But that would be out of character for him and for the United Nations more generally. In any case, let's move on to the hostage release negotiations between Israel and Hamas, which are proceeding with American mediation. But first, I want to invite you to keep sharing the truth. So guys, hit that subscribe button on TBN Israel and help us reach more people around the world. After the Hamas terrorist organization rejected the New Deal outline proposed by the United States Special Envoy Steve Witkoff earlier this week, the IDF conducted intense strikes in Gaza throughout Sunday morning. Now, it seems that the strikes paid off, as Qatar and Egypt issued a statement saying that they are working on a new proposal based on the Witkoff outline, but the real success lies in Hamas's announcement that it is ready to begin an immediate round of negotiations. As recalled, Witkoff recently presented a new outline for a possible hostage deal. Under the outline, 5 living hostages would return to Israel together with the remains of 18 others who died in captivity by Hamas, and Israel approved, and Hamas's response consisted of a maneuver ostensibly accepting the outline and asking for a few small changes, but in practice demanding substantial changes, which added up to a rejection of Witkoff's proposal. And as a bonus, Hamas also accused Israel of rejecting the Witkoff proposal and presented an obstacle to the progresses in the negotiations to end this war. In response, Israel began to apply heavy military pressure across the Gaza Strip, prompting Qatari and Egyptian statements saying, "We continue our efforts to bring positions closer and resolve the differences to reach an agreement in Gaza based on the Witkoff proposal. We expect to achieve a 60-day ceasefire that will lead to a permanent ceasefire agreement in Gaza, ending the humanitarian crisis." But the real success is seen in Hamas's statements that came immediately after the mediators' announcements that it welcomes the ongoing efforts of Qatar and Egypt to end the occupation's war in Gaza Strip. "We are ready to begin an immediate round of indirect negotiations to reach an agreement that will supply aid to our people and the humanitarian tragedy and lead to a permanent ceasefire." To bring some context to all of this, it is important to point out that Hamas is at its lowest point since it was founded and in a real danger of ceasing to be an influential actor in this region. Most of its military leadership has been eliminated, much like Hezbollah, and at the same time, most of its military power has also been lost. Far worse from their point of view is that it has lost legitimacy even amongst the Gaza residents, the Palestinians. For them, the barrier of fear of Hamas has been broken, mainly thanks to the American aid distribution centers under the Israeli protection. And beyond that, remember that report on Saudi channel Al-Hadat that Hamas has lost security control in the Gaza Strip and its security apparatus has collapsed? At the same time, Hamas tried to curb the chaos and looting through local clan leadership, but without success. They tried to steal the food from the people. It was also reported that a large part of the terrorist organization's array collapsed after the elimination of its senior figures. Hamas understands this and is making desperate attempts to stop this aid route, including staging shooting incidents like the one that happened on Monday and Tuesday mornings outside of the centers, claiming dozens of Gazan lives. Even the mobilization to its aid by many world media outlets, which uncritically accepted Hamas's narrative, can change the long-term picture for Hamas. As proof of this, Witkoff's sharp, critical reaction to Hamas's answer earlier this week surprised the organization's leadership, which responded with a sort of an insult, but the furious ones are the Americans, who received Hamas's rejection precisely after opening a direct channel with Hamas to Israel's dismay. All these, together with the IDF's activities in the strategic points in the Gaza Strip, apparently brought Hamas back to the negotiating table. On the Israeli side, the policy of negotiating under fire continues, and continued military pressure is working well, while the supply centers are operating excellently, and there is an intention to open even more. They work great both for their direct role as distributing the supplies to the Palestinian people, and equally important for eliminating the Gazans' dependency on Hamas, which had seized the supplies that previously arrived mainly through the United Nations organizations. A recent statement by a senior Israeli official regarding this issue said that Israel is committed to the outline presented by Envoy Witkoff, the outline it approved and Hamas rejected. Israel will continue all political and military efforts to bring about the hostages' release and ensure that Hamas will no longer pose any threat to the State of Israel. That is, Israel will only agree to a ceasefire on the condition of the immediate release of half of the hostages and without committing to a withdrawal outline or other Hamas demands, such as a long-term hudna, which is the Arabic word for a temporary ceasefire. The expectation in Jerusalem is that at some point Hamas will be forced to accept the ceasefire terms, perhaps with minor changes due to its situation on the ground. Until then, Operation Gideon's Chariots will continue and even expand street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood, as cautiously as possible to avoid casualties, but with determination and with non-stop aerial eliminations of anyone who ever carried a Hamas membership card in any kind of role. This is because despite of Hamas's willingness to continue negotiations, Israel clarifies that in practice there is no change in the organization's position and that the gaps with the Witkoff outline remain the same. Israeli sources said that Hamas's reply does not include a serious response to the American proposal and even presents new demands far from Israel's line. And with all of this in mind, it was decided not to send a delegation to Doha, Qatar, to participate in negotiations at this stage. Guys, keep spreading the truth and follow us. And give a click on that subscribe button to stay tuned to the truth in real time. And if you want to support our work and help us create more videos like this one, please click the donate button on YouTube or visit our website at tbnisrael.com/give. And speaking of the truth, there's one more story to report about events in the Gaza Strip this week, and that is the new leader of the Hamas terrorist organization who has emerged to take over from Mohammed Sinwar, who was eliminated in an Israeli airstrike last month. His turn to be eliminated will come soon, but until then, he holds the hostages and a veto power over any decision that Hamas might want to make in negotiations to end this war. His name is Ezzadin al-Haddad, and he climbed the ranks in Hamas after surviving 6 assassination attempts during this war. After taking over the military wing of Hamas following the termination of Mohammed Sinwar, the 55-year-old al-Haddad's nickname, Abu Shahib, quickly established himself as the main obstacle to the ceasefire agreement with Israel. Although he has a final word on a ceasefire from Gaza, another Hamas official named Muhammad Ismail Darwish is heading the negotiations with the United States in Doha, Qatar. Darwish, previously described by the intelligence agents as somewhat anonymous, and he has been involved in Hamas's financial operations and fundings. He was born in a Palestinian refugee camp in Lebanon and has never been to the Gaza Strip. He currently lives in a luxury hotel in Qatar, and he met this year with Iranian and Turkish leaders while traveling between Cairo and Doha for indirect negotiations with Israel. He has long kept a low profile for fear of a possible Israeli strike, but now he's managing the current ceasefire effort, which are the closest that they've been to a breakthrough for many months now. Mediators see them as the last chance to secure a pause in the fighting before the IDF completes the conquest of the Gaza Strip, and many Israelis are hopeful that they will result in the last of the hostages finally coming back home. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report the truth about what's happening in Israel, and we ask you to help us. How can you help us? You can subscribe to this YouTube channel, you can also visit our social media accounts, and you can also donate. You can donate by clicking the donate button on YouTube or by visiting our website at tbnisrael.com/give. That way we can create more videos about what's happening in Israel. Now, we are switching our focus to Israel's northern arena. Thomas Burke, the United States Special Envoy to Syria, expressed support this week for a new plan to integrate about 3,500 foreign fighters into the Syrian army, most of them from countries such as China, Turkmenistan, and Chechnya. Reuters reported on Monday evening that the United States has given its blessings to al-Shaara's new government in Syria to integrate these foreign jihadist fighters who are part of the rebel forces into the Syrian army, provided that this is done transparently. Burke said, "We are witnessing a process in which these fighters show loyalty to the new Syria, and they are preferable as part of a regular army rather than as a free potential threat in the field." The move is drawing both criticism and support. Former Syrian Vice President Farouk al-Shara and his associates claimed that abandoning the foreign fighters would lead to a loss of control, saying if they are pushed out, they will find a new home in organizations like Al-Qaeda or join even more dangerous jihadists. This narrative received support from other elements in the regime, and as I said before, they seem to have convinced the Trump administration. I must admit that this makes some sense, but I must also point out that there are those who disagree, and I'm sure Israel will be keeping a very close watch on the situation moving forward. Another country likely to be keeping a very close watch in these areas is China. Most of the fighters expected to be integrated into the army belong to the Uyghur rebel group, the Turkestan Islamic Party, and organization designed as terrorists by China. Authorities in Beijing expressed hope that Syria would oppose all forms of extremism and terrorism on its territory and called for close monitoring of the former group's activities. And spokesmen for the group said that they are no longer operating independently but are fully subordinated to the Syrian regime. But my guess is that the Chinese will not take their word for it. In any case, according to the plan, the foreign fighters will be assigned to Division 84, a new Syrian army unit that will also include Syrian soldiers. This is a possibility that their family members will even receive Syrian citizenship in light of their contribution to the fight against anti-Assad forces in Syria. And now we move on to two reports regarding Iran. Israel was not surprised by reports that Iran is about to reject the American proposal for a renewed nuclear deal. Now the question is whether the United States will continue to negotiate with Iran or return to the military option that is on the table, as President Donald Trump has threatened several times. The latest such threat came overnight between Monday and Tuesday when he wrote on his own Truth social media network that President Biden should have stopped Iran long ago from enriching under our possible deal. We will not allow no enrichment of uranium. However, the news portal Axios reported that contrary to Trump's words, the proposal that the Americans delivers does not include dismantling all of the Islamic Republic's nuclear facilities and will allow enrichment of uranium to a low level of 3% on Iranian soil for a period to be agreed in the negotiations between the two countries. There was no official Israeli reaction to these reports over the weekend because it does not want to appear responsible for a crisis in the talks against the backdrop of reports that Trump's administration officials claim that Israel is pushing for a war with Iran. The assessment is that Iran's refusal is not the final word, and it is likely that the Americans will give the negotiations another chance. However, it appears that the gaps between the sides are very large. Among the clashing red lines, the United States is demanding that Iran commit to cancel all uranium enrichment, along with an Iranian demand for the immediate removal of all American sanctions. In this proposal, the American position on enrichment on Iranian soil remains unchanged, and there is no clear explanation regarding the lifting of the sanctions. This is according to one diplomat that is involved in negotiations. According to the report, the one who floated this creative idea was none other than our friend Steve Witkoff, the President Trump's envoy in these negotiations. But Iran decided to reply negatively to the American proposal, which did not include Washington's recognition of Tehran's right to enrich uranium. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has previously declared that the Islamic Republic's right to enrich uranium is not up for discussion, but Tehran has expressed willingness for flexibility in the negotiations, provided that it can continue to enrich uranium on its soil. And meanwhile, Bloomberg reported today that Iran sharply criticized the latest International Atomic Energy Agency report, which claimed that Iran violated the terms of the previous nuclear agreements and the Non-Proliferation Treaty. The report, published on Saturday, noted that Iran had significantly increased its stockpile of enriched uranium to a level close to weapons grade. This is an amount sufficient, according to the estimates, for about 10 nuclear bombs. It also stated that Iran had not reported nuclear materials at 3 undeclared sites. With these revelations in mind, the agency said it could not provide assurances that Iran's nuclear program is for peaceful purposes only. Iranian officials claimed it was a politically motivated report, stressing that it has no aspiration to obtain nuclear weapons. In parallel, President Trump responded to Extremists' report that the proposal presented to Iran would allow it to enrich uranium at a low level for a limited period, saying, "Under any possible agreement, we will not allow Iran any kind of uranium enrichment." So to make a quick comment of my own about all of this, I'm not surprised that the Iranian officials continue to deny that they're pursuing for nuclear weapons, but I have a hard time understanding why anyone continues to even pretend to believe them and take them seriously. In any case, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development, and as always, we ask you to keep spreading the truth, share and follow us, and most importantly, hit the subscribe button and help us reach more people. And if you want to donate to our work, hit that donate button on YouTube or visit tbnisrael.com/give. Every dollar will be invested in creating more videos like this one. The next report comes from the US state of Colorado, USA, and it's really hard for me to believe that this is the second time in 2 weeks that we are reporting a hate attack against Jews in America. On Monday, a man threw a Molotov cocktail at participants in a march for the release of the hostages being held in the city of Boulder, Colorado. 8 people between the ages of 67 and 88 were injured to variety degrees and taken to hospitals. Authorities arrived at the scene, including the FBI, and Boulder police called on the public to stay away from that area. A senior White House official told Axios that President Trump was updated on the events and the details of these events. Mark McClick, an FBI representative in Colorado, said that the suspect, 45-year-old Muhammad Sabri Suleiman, used a flame-throwing device and other ignition devices that he hurled at the crowd while shouting, "Free Palestine." According to him, there is currently no information indicating that the suspect is in connection to any organization or any group, and Fox News reported that the suspect, Suleiman, is an Egyptian who came to the United States 2 years ago and remained in the country after his visa expired. McClake said, "It is clear this is a deliberate incident and we are investigating it as a terrorism event. We will ensure that justice is done quickly and that there is security for everyone. The White House Deputy Chief of Staff confirmed the FBI statements, posting on X that Suleiman is an illegal immigrant who received a work permit from the Biden administration, and adding that the suicide immigration policy must be cancelled. Earlier, Stephen Redfern, the Colorado police chief, told reporters police were called to reports of a man setting people on fire. We found multiple victims from burn injuries who were rushed to the hospital, and the suspect was arrested immediately. Such an act is unacceptable. We are working to find out exactly what happened. The United Arab Emirates Foreign Ministry sharply condemned the terror attack, which led to the injury of innocent people. In a statement, the ministry emphasized the Emirates' firm stance in rejecting any form of violence and terror directed against innocent civilians. It is worth mentioning that the United Arab Emirates hastened to condemn the attack that occurred in Washington about 2 weeks ago, in which 2 Israeli embassy employees, Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgam, were murdered. And according to the American CBS network, the march that was attacked is a march for the hostage organized by a non-profit organization called Run for Their Lives. The group gathered at 1 p.m. to march along the Pearl Street in the city and was supposed to finish at the local courthouse and film a video there, but the attack, which occurred near the courthouse, interrupted those plans. To give some context, the march for the release of the hostages takes place in many United States cities every week, and for the most part, these events pass without any unusual incidents. Run for Their Lives issued a statement saying that this is not a protest, it's a peaceful walk aimed at showing solidarity with the hostages and with their families, and a plea for their release. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted in English, "My wife and I and all the people of Israel pray for the full recovery of the injured in the severe terrorist attack that occurred in Boulder, Colorado." So while hatred against the people of Israel is being spread and strengthened, it is more important than ever for you to stand with the people of Israel. Let's unite in prayer for the truth to go out there around the world, and let's unite in prayer for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.